Chris, my brother. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just maintaining, trying to get by, trying to keep pushing.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel
Family
you.
all good. I know you said your daughter's graduation was impacted by COVID, but you still got a chance to celebrate. So I just wanted to congratulate you on your daughter graduating college. That's a big accomplishment.
Thank you. It's actually two of them. I got twins.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
They both graduated, and but I thank you. It was definitely great in many ways.
right.
You know, I'm proud of them, and I'm also glad to get that bill off my
Right.
back.
Right. So before we get started, and again, you're in LA, right?
I'm in Jersey.
Oh,
I
you're
live
in
in Jersey. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in LA a lot during the season, but you know, with the lockdown, I've been in Jersey at my home since March 14th.
Got you.
That's one of the bright spots about this pandemic is that I've just been able to be home with the family.
Right. Yeah, but before we get started, I know today's it's 1:00. You have a ton of stuff to do, I'm sure. So I only have you on for a brief moment. But I appreciate you. One, I know I've told you this before when we've spoken. You're one of my journalistic inspirations that kind of like steered me into pursuing this. You, Stuart Scott, Stephen A. Smith, other guys like that, guys who looked, similar to myself, that made me feel like I didn't have to be a basketball player, an athlete, that I could impact sports by writing it, covering it, reporting it, etc. So I appreciate that about you. But for me,
Thank you, man.
The biggest thing it is for me, and I've told you this on several accounts, is you're a man of God and I'm a man of faith. We're both men of faith. And most of our conversations, actually, whether it's text, have been, faith. Like you introduced me to the King movement. So I applaud you for being somebody who stands on what he means and what he believes, and for leading.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I think that's important for the reasons you mentioned. It's important for people to see, just like it's important for people to see African Americans in these spaces. It's important for people to see men of God in these spaces too, because there's so much out there that's telling you to go against your beliefs. And so those of us who, God didn't lift me up and give me this platform for me to leave him out, you know, and you see me, I mean, I don't force it. I mean, when it's time to talk basketball, I'm talking basketball or football or whatever it is. But when the door opens, you need to share who you are and what you're about.
Amen to that. To get right into it, what is your thought? What are your thoughts on the NBA's return? Do you feel like it is a good idea that the NBA return amidst COVID and social injustice reform?
I mean, look, as far as the social justice reform, I'm fine with them coming back. I think they're doing a good job from putting Black Lives Matter on the court. And then the players are going to have these slogans on the back of their shirts, some of them at least. So I think that's good. And then, of course, when they're interviewed, they'll be able to address various issues. So I don't think it'll take away from the movement. In fact, I think the movement, kind of that next step from sounding the alarm, which the protesters have done, which the players will do with the slogans on their back and stuff. Now it's time to start putting some plans together for policies, changes, and legislation and things like that. And I'm actually working with Ice Cube on, you may have seen, he released his contract with Black America recently. And I'm working with him and some other people. We have some economists, we have some financial people that have worked on Wall Street, lawyers, like we have some educators really looking this thing over to put some real, to take it to the next level, because you can't just protest forever. We have to, the goal is for us to get back to some sense of normalcy and have peace. And to do that, we want to, now it's about, okay, what is this going to lead to? And not just police reform. That's one thing. That's only a small thing. If a year from now, when this hopefully is over, if all we can say is we got police reform, that's nice and that's necessary.
Right.
But we need real systemic changes, because a lot of the reason for a lot of the madness going on in the hoods is the economic and educational disparities and problems. I'm not taking all the responsibility off individuals, but heck, we see people with wealth, education, all the opportunities in the world committing crimes,
Right.
corporate crimes.
Right.
So how much more challenging is it for somebody who's been made an outcast in society? They don't have many great opportunities. They may come from a tough situation family-wise.
Mm-hmm.
How much tougher is it for them to avoid, having these moral lapses and doing these negative things? So we want systemic change. And so hopefully that's what we will get. But as far as the COVID, look, this thing has become so politicized. It's a shame. Right. Because people that are on one side, the right, think it's a hoax and a joke. And people that are on the left think it's the worst thing in the world. And I'm just trying to figure out, I'm trying to believe the doctors and the experts and the epidemiologists and all that, because I think it's ignorant for somebody that really doesn't know what they're talking about to act like they know what this virus really is and really isn't and all that stuff. I'm trying to follow the experts. And unless the experts are just straight up, trying to sabotage not only America, but the world, then I mean, you have to believe somebody, right?
Right.
When you go to, we talked about this on my radio show with Rob Parker the other night. When you go to the restaurant, you order, you trust and believe the people handling your food, that they didn't spit in it, that they didn't drop it on the floor, that they made it, Right. When you hire a lawyer or an agent, we're talking sports, you trust them with that they have financial knowledge. That once that's broken down, I don't know how you can have a society. So I'm going to trust the so-called experts. And according to them, the NBA has done a good job of kind of putting everything together. Now, that doesn't mean they'll get to complete the season, but they're if they don't complete it, I don't think it'll be the NBA's fault. I think I'm fine with them trying. It's about money. Let's keep it real on both sides. The owners they want to make that little bit of money that they can make up through this. And then the players understand that the cap's going to plummet if they don't play, and the owners might lock them out if they don't play for next year. So they're doing it for money too, which is cool. Fine. We all need the money. So I'm fine with them giving it a try. If things get too bad health-wise, then I think they'd be wise to cut it off. Mm-hmm. And I won't fault the NBA for giving it a try. So hopefully it'll work out.
I mean, yeah, but definitely. I think they're going to try to do the best that they can to finish the season. Even Popovich has come out and said, like, I don't know where it can get any safer, right? He's like, this is as safe as it can get. But with that being said, there's like the snitch hotline, and there's like the guys who are leaving the bubble to get food, like not realizing they're breaking, the protocols. Do you think the bubble could actually work, like on a player standpoint? Like, can they be disciplined enough as adults? It's unfortunate to even have to ask this, but can they do it?
They can. I mean, there's no question that they can. But man, you when you're young and you're in your 20s and you think you can do anything and you don't think any harm's gonna come your way, especially when you add on to that wealth and privilege, which these players have. They're used to having the world as their oyster, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you're probably gonna have some dudes trying to do some things, get some girls in or go out to see some girls or whatever. Let's just keep it real. Hopefully, I think what's gonna happen is I haven't seen the workers from Disney, but if the women are pretty attractive to the players, then they're gonna be like supermodels to these guys.
Right. I mean,
so but the snitch hotline, I look at it like this. I mean, obviously, people don't like snitching, but this is different. This is if you go afoul of the rules, then you are impacting others, right? You're not just, it's not just, yo, he's sneaking off, he wants to be with his girlfriend or with a woman or whatever. That's his business. I don't think anybody would snitch on that. But if you sneak off and you come back and maybe you catch the virus, maybe you give it, if I'm a Laker and you give it somehow to LeBron, you ruined our chances to win a championship, or you give it to the whole, half the team. I mean, so I think in this case, it's not about snitching as much as it's about, look, we're all here to do a job. We want to keep the integrity of the season, and hopefully everybody can stay healthy so we can have a legitimate season. So I just look at it that way. And I think the dudes that do want to kind of go off campus or whatever, I think they always talk about it's a fraternity, it's a brotherhood. I think they show great unity during this time off to work with the league on, getting back together. Even the calls with Kyrie and, that was good that they could get the players together like that.
Right.
So I think they need to look at it as I'm not going to jeopardize my brothers, so I'm not going to be selfish and go try to get mine. I'm going to respect their rights and humanity as much as I'm respecting my own. So I'm going to chill.
And that's a good point, because Kendrick Perkins has been vocal about this. He said, man, snitch your behind off until you can't no more. And, Marcus Morris was one of the NBA players that responded and said, Perkins is going out bad. But Perk was like, don't even look at it from the standpoint of like it's snitching like you're in the street or something like that.
Right. It's totally different.
It's totally different. And there are guys who work for the team that don't make $500,000 that need this job. Like when the NBA, if it shuts down and it doesn't work, those guys are back to, having to figure out how to pay their bills. So I think there's a different aspect to it.
And that's not, we didn't even mention the health aspect.
Right.
Of, we're still learning about this disease. There are some doctors saying even if you get over it and it seems like you didn't have any issues, it could affect your lungs long term and things like that. So it's just, dudes need to just try to do the best they can to follow the rules and stay safe.
Right. Zion, it broke like about an hour or so ago that Zion had to leave the bubble for a family emergency. I hope everything's well and not too bad. But he's expected to return. With that said, do you think the Pelicans, do you think they are primed to win that 8th spot rather than the Grizzlies or the Blazers?
I don't think they'll win it outright, but I think they can get within the range where they can have a playoff, like they can play for that 8th seed, because they're 3.5 back with 8 games left. Not only would they have to go on a great run, but the Grizzlies would have to fall off completely. And so, but you only have to be within like 4 games for the playoffs. So I think they can get there. Look, I love the Pelicans' future. And I know, there's been reports that Alvin Gentry's job is in trouble. And I've heard that myself throughout the season. I think they should give him, and I'm not saying Alvin Gentry is Red Auerbach, all right? But he should get a legitimate shot with this team. They were playing well before the break. They've got a lot of young talent. Obviously, you were without Zion for the bulk of the season. Right. So I do think he should get the full seat, or, get to start next season off and at least, a good portion of the season to see if he's putting it together well before they would let him go. So hopefully that happens. But I do like them better than Portland and Memphis. So I give them a shot to get that if they do get to a playoff. But obviously, whoever gets that 8th seed is going out in a hurry. But it'll still be good experience. So, like, for instance, if you're Memphis or New Orleans and you get that 8th seed and you get beat in 4 or 5 games by the Lakers, that's still good, because next year, instead of going into it like, let's make the playoffs, now you're going into it like, okay, the playoffs, we're counting on that.
Right.
Let's make some noise once we get there. Right. Versus if you don't get in, now next year you just kind of looking at it like, well, the goal is to make the playoffs. And so I think it kind of it just speeds up the process of you trying to become a contender.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that young Thunder team with Russ and Harden and KD when they faced the Lakers in the first round. Fought the Lakers pretty hard. The Lakers won in like 5 or 6 games or something like that off of Pau Gasol putback. But the following year, they came back, and it was never about making the playoffs at that point. It was about how much noise can we make to get to where we got to get. Has Zion done enough for you to be considered Rookie of the Year?
No. I mean, part of the job description is being there.
Right.
I mean, seriously, like now it'd be one thing if Ja Morant hadn't been sensational and led a Memphis team that nobody thought could make the playoffs to the playoffs, essentially, or to the 8th seed. Right. But no, you can't. The fewest games someone's played in one Rookie of the Year, I believe, is Patrick Ewing playing 50 out of 82. Zion's played, 19, I think, out of roughly 65 or whatever. So, no. And now, has he been slightly better than Ja? Probably. Because remember, he's only averaging like 6 rebounds a game.
Right.
For all his hops and his size and his strength, and I'm not speaking against Zion because I really like him, but he hasn't really defended. He's not killing it on the glass. He's scoring like a mug. But, and that's great. And they're winning. They were actually playing really well before Zion got back. So their winning hasn't shifted that much. But Ja's been 17, 7 assists, team leader right from day one, playing good defense. Like, it's Ja, period.
So who do you like coming out the East or the West? I've had people say from the Houston Rockets because of the AAU style tournament, like the Lakers are like the biggest losers, quote unquote, because of the home court advantage. They totally lose that, right? Even if they were playing on the road. Who do you like coming out West and coming out East as title favorites?
Well, my pick has, for most of the season, early on, I went with the Lakers. I think I was kind of thinking with my heart, and they got a good team, don't get me wrong. But I'd like to see LeBron get that 4th ring. But I just think the Clippers, early on, I switched to the Clippers. I think they're better. I think they're deeper. I think they got more dog in them. I think they're hungrier. I know LeBron's hungry, but I think up and down the roster, I think the Clippers are hungrier. And man, Kawhi is a bad boy, period. Yeah. And obviously on both sides of the floor, but in the mid, down the stretch, he's strong. Lou Williams is strong down the stretch. So I've got the Clippers in the West, and then in the East, I mean, I'm going to go with Milwaukee, but I do think they could be upset. I think Boston is going to be tough because they're well coached, which I think will be a key for this kind of strange season. They play defense. They're young. They're hungry. And their chemistry with Kemba, assuming Kemba can really stay healthy, is good. I think Miami, I wouldn't pick Miami to get all the way to the finals, but I think they could spoil it for somebody. Mm-hmm. And they played Milwaukee tough in the regular season, beat them, I think, 2-0. Yeah. And they got Bam can guard, Giannis to some degree, and then you got Jimmy Butler, and they got that shooting. So I think Miami with Eric Spoelstra is a good coach too. Toronto, I love. Nick Nurse is great. They play incredibly hard, but they haven't been great against the top teams in the league. Right. They've been pretty good, but I don't know that they can get over the hump and get to the finals. Philadelphia is interesting. They were my preseason pick in the East because they do have the most talent in the East, but they just haven't figured out the chemistry yet. Their 2 best players haven't played exceptionally well together, Embiid and Simmons. Yeah. And now you're talking about Shake Milton at the point, who I like, but I don't know how that's going to work. I think that's going to push Embiid out to the 3-point line with Simmons on the box, which is not going to help Philly. I think, honestly, if I'm Philly and I'm saying, look, we're going to start Shake at the point, then I'm going old school. We have something unique that no one else in the league really has. Mm-hmm. We got 2 dudes that can punish you down low. And I'm talking about Simmons too. Right. Simmons is a really nice scorer around the rim. Right. And you can have him and Embiid floating around the block, flashing, picking for each other, one of them at the high post, one of them low. And then you got your shooters, Tobias Harris, Josh Richardson, and Shake around them, kind of like Houston did with Elijah Wine when they had him on the box and Kenny Smith, Sam Cassell, shooters on the outside.
Right.
I would try to go that route and say, we're going to play differently than the rest of the league. We're going old school. We'll see if you can stop it. But it's kind of, you know, because you're adding the three-point shot. So it's not so much old school, but that I think is their best chance to win. If it ends up being too much of Ben by the rim and Embiid, and some of it's on the coaches, some of it's on Embiid himself, but if he's floating around the three-point line, taking 5 threes a game, that's going to hurt him. His biggest strength is punishing people on the box, and I want his bread and butter to be down there rather than if he's floating around the three-point line, he might as well be 6'4",
right.
7 feet. And so but they're a wild card because of their talent. So it'll be interesting to see how they work it out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works out if Embiid indeed does pull himself back out more to try to create more space for him to work.
Yeah, look, and that's and this, but I know you a young brother, so I imagine a lot of these listeners are young. Let me tell y'all something about spacing the floor, okay? Because now that's the big thing, spacing the floor, and I get it. It makes sense, but people are so brainwashed, including some coaches and players in the league. Mm-hmm. They're so skewed by that line of thinking that it's almost like they feel like if you got one dude on the box and a defender down there with him, you can't penetrate.
Right.
Like, oh, he's clogging up the lane. Stop it. Y'all go watch The Last Dance. Hopefully you already watched it.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when you drove to the hoop, look at Michael Jordan. And at any level, I played high school and college. When you drove to the paint, you would have to know how to finish with 6 and 7 dudes in the paint.
Right.
Some of them yours, some of them theirs. But you have to know, you go into the paint, it's men in there. And you got to be able to finish.
Right.
And so this notion that I can't drive to the bucket if God forbid 3 people are in the lane, come on, you can. And so that needs to change too, man. You know, I'm not calling y'all soft, but I'm just saying.
I respect it.
I'm messing with the millennials, man. But really though, this notion that you can't drive if somebody's in the paint is ridiculous.
Yeah, and again, as a Laker fan, I'm kind of hurt that the Clippers. I mean, they are what they are. For Christmas, I flew out to LA, me and my wife, and we watched Kawhi. Absolutely, like that's the first time I've seen him in person, and he is absolutely as advertised. So I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. I want to see if LeBron takes that personal, because it's like, you know.
And you know what? And I remember their third game when the Lakers finally beat them, and you know, little aside, Avery Bradley, who's not playing, had 6 threes in that game. So he was big. But the first 2 games, LeBron, and it wasn't fear or nothing, but he didn't take up the challenge for whatever reason. You know, the third game he did and said, look, I'm the best player in the world, and let me show it. And he's going to have to do that every night, and so is Anthony Davis. I actually think Davis is the key for the Lakers. Because LeBron's going to play well. I don't think he's going to he'll have great numbers. He'll be, you know, play great, but he's not just going to run roughshod over Kawhi and Paul George. Right. And so Anthony Davis is the wild card, because while the Clippers have guys that can match up with LeBron, they don't have a guy that can really match up with Anthony Davis. And so he's going to have to exploit them, particularly in the fourth quarters. And he hasn't done that in the season. He averaged 26 points a game against the Clippers in the 3 games. But in the fourth quarter, he had 8 total points in those 3 games. 21 minutes, 8 points. That's not going to cut it. He's going to have to be a monster in the fourth quarter. And I'll tell you what, for their future, if AD can be that monster, like let's say they meet the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals, and, you know, LeBron does his 27, 9, and 9 or whatever. But AD is the difference. AD is beasting in the fourth quarter. And because of that, the Lakers win the championship or get to the finals and then win it. that is huge because I have always said the way an AD, I used to say this for Kyrie Irving too, who could have looked at it this way. What you need to do is win your ring or rings with LeBron is the best while you're still that second guy. And there'll be a natural shift as LeBron ages and you get better. AD will become that guy, but LeBron will still be good enough to where he'll top 10 player where they could still win championships. Kind of like Oscar when he won it with Kareem. Kareem was the guy then. Oscar, though, was still great enough where they could win a championship. And that can help LeBron, too. But that's the transition that eventually has to take place. And if AD could go ahead and be in beast mode this year, then it could really be great for the Lakers, not only this year, but going forward.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think AD has to be special for the Lakers to be able to beat the Clippers in particular. I'm going to let you go, Chris, but I got one more question I want to ask you, and it's not necessarily basketball, but this is an interesting thing. Cam and the Patriots, does that work?
Man, look, months ago, I was saying Cam needs to go to New England. And we were having guests on our radio show, The Odd Couple, with me and Rob Parker, Fox Sports Radio, 7 to 10 Eastern, but every night. But we were saying, we were bringing guests on NFL insiders, and they were right, I'm sure, at the time. But they were saying, you know, the Patriots aren't interested. It's not happening. It might be a good fit, but they just haven't shown any interest. But I thought from day one, I was like, this will be perfect. Number one, you obviously have a great coach in Belichick. Right. Cam will respect him, obviously. And I think Cam, remember, if he's healthy, and that's the key, but he looks healthy. I know it's just Instagram videos, but when you look at what he was been doing on his foot, which was the injury, what he's doing with his shoulder, they look like he's working out on those parts. Right. So the last time we saw Cam healthy, it was the beginning of 2018. And over the first half of the season, he was great. 15 touchdowns, 4 picks, 67% completion, in the MVP conversation. In Carolina was 6-2. He gets hurt, but plays through it, but can't really overcome the injuries. And then they fall off the map. And the first 2 games last year, same thing. He looked bad, injuries, and all that. If he's healthy, remember, Josh McDaniels will put together an offense to maximize Cam's strengths. Everybody's like, oh, he's not Tom Brady. He can't do it. They're not going to ask him to be Tom Brady. Yeah. They're gonna play a whole different way. Because look at that team. Sometimes they've been run first. Sometimes they're 12. They're stacked with the 12 formation with 2 tight ends. Sometimes they go spread offense. Their versatility from year to year, sometimes from week to week, is one of the strengths of that team. And so they will craft the right offense for Cam. Remember, McDaniels won with Tim Tebow in Denver. Yeah. So I think Cam's going to have a nice year. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think they'll win the AFC, but I think Cam will have a bounce back year and they'll make the playoffs.
That's interesting to see. I think my concern is the weapons that are there. Not having the big receivers. He
doesn't have weapons. Although N'Keal Harry. Yeah, I wanted something from him last year. Obviously, he was hurt. Yeah. But, I think he's okay. You're right. That's a concern. But I think they'll be able to overcome it enough to make the playoffs.
Well, we'll definitely be locked in to see that. Chris, my man, I appreciate you so much for joining me today. This was truly, truly an honor. Much love, much blessings, much respect to you, man.
All right, my man. Peace. Stay in touch.
Later.
Yep.